I'm sure we've all heard of Disney, right? That adorable mouse and all the other lovable characters. Well, when I was a child, my favourite was Pinocchio. He had always appealed to me. The simple fact of him wanting to be a boy was charming and yet strangely unsettling. I mean, what would he do to become a boy? I also found his growing nose amusing. Apologies, my name is Brian, and I used to live in a little town in Oklahoma that was known as Vieilleville, which is French for Old Town. I used to live near some people who loved Disney. And I mean they loved it. So much so that their car had Mickey ears. They seemed like nice people. I didn't get to talk to them much, but from what I heard from other people, they were strange. All they talked about was Disney. I even heard of a guy who threw them out. He actually died a few days later. The police found him dead on the floor with white goop surrounding him. Nothing else was found. Just him and that strange white goop. As any murder story in a little town, it popped up on the news as, well, breaking news. Typically, I believe what's on the news. But this time, my brain had a different idea. It told me that all of what they were saying was crap. I didn't know who or what killed him, but the main thing I had to question was the goop. Who would spread goop over a corpse, and what was it? I did get scared, and I couldn't sleep for several nights. Well, they left that house a few months back. I don't know why, they just left. No rhyme, no reason. It was actually very strange. They left after the murder took place, but after they left, no one could find them, so the police couldn't ask questions or anything. Typically at this point, I give you my thoughts and everything, but this isn't a murder mystery. This is about a rather strange encounter I had at that home. Why I went there will be explained, so keep listening. Well, I heard that in that house, they left a few treasures. One of those being a rather large Pinocchio doll. Of course, hearing this, my child sparked up inside me, and I wanted that thing so bad. I thought it would be bad to go in there and steal, but then I heard of two guys that went in there and got items and actually sold them for some good money. That really sparked something inside me, and I began to think and think. If they could go in there, so could I. It may seem that I wanted to sell the doll for money, but no, I wanted it for myself. I have no kids, in case you're wondering. I bounced back on the idea for a few days. One day, I thought I would go in there, but then my angel side said no. But after 4 days of haggling with my own mind, I couldn't help it any longer. I felt something wash over me. Yeah, I felt agreed and eventually decided to go in there. I took the next opportunity I got, which happened to be 5 days after I heard of the other two guys. It seemed to all fall in place perfectly. The day after I decide to go there, I get my opportunity. Was this destiny? Nah, just my mind going on. It was a rather normal day. I didn't seem to have anything special to do, so I saw the opportunity and took it while I had the chance. My days seemed to stay on a schedule, but that's another story. I brought 3 things: a bag, a camera, and a flashlight. I knew it would be dark, so I got the flashlight. The bag was for whatever I would take that needed to be stored somewhere, and the camera was so I could show my friends, so they wouldn't think I was a lying rat. After I got it all ready, well, I was ready to go on this little adventure. Then it came. The night was upon me. It had come much faster than I expected. It had only taken me about 10 minutes to get everything ready. I made sure of my surroundings, and then I set off. Like I said, I didn't live very far away. Maybe like a block? I mean, if I were to stand on a very high thing, then I would be able to see the house. Anyway, as I walked there, I seemed to be having flashbacks of the guy who died. I felt something uneasy in the air, and that uneasiness only seemed to rise as I grew closer to that old, rotting place. I didn't know what to expect out of the house. A rotting piece of trash? Yeah, I expected that too. I seemed to get to the house much faster than I thought I would. I was hoping it would take longer. I didn't know if I would be able to do it. It wasn't huge. It was only 1 story tall, and had what appeared to be maybe 5 rooms. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It still looked horrible, but not the kind of condition you'd expect from an old home. Meanwhile, I stepped inside. It was dark, so instinctively, I turned on my flashlight. As soon as I flicked it on, something seemed to move. I looked around, and there was nothing unusual. I just shrugged and let my eyes wander the room, curious to see what was in there. This room had brown walls made of wood that seemed to be decaying every waking moment. The couches, which there were only 2, were white and very dusty. I hit one of the cushions to see how much dust would kick up. Knowing my luck, a lot of dust did. It got caught in my eyes and made me cough. I couldn't see anything with the dust in my eyes, which made my brain, of course, flash images of the dead guy. I seemed to forget about the dust and my eyes shot open. Nothing too odd here. Then, my ears seemed to pick up a sound. It was low, so I had to be very quiet to hear it. It sounded like coughing, which I thought was odd, considering I had just coughed. The rest of the room wasn't much to speak of, with the exceptions of the items within the room itself. The items were very odd. There were the normal things, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, etc. But there was a certain thing that I saw that made me want to run. It was a shelf, but on that shelf were some heads. No, not human heads. Disney heads. Goofies, Mickeys, and Donalds. It was unsettling. Not enough to make me vomit, but still, my stomach began to feel uneasy. There seemed to be some sort of white substance dripping from them. Then, he popped into my head. The dead man. He had been found with white goop around him. That's when my stomach really lurched. My brain was basically yelling at me to leave. But, for whatever reason, I had to go on. I swear, I saw one of those eyes move. Maybe it was the paranoia getting to me, but I don't think it was. Despite my best instincts telling me to get out now, I continued on into the house. I ventured further into the house and into the kitchen. There were smashed plates and glasses on the ground, and there were some cobwebs. I thought it was odd. The houses like this typically have cobwebs and dust, and they've only been abandoned for a few months. What was even weirder was the center of the room. There was a fairly large wood table in the center. There was a torn tablecloth, Disney themed of course. The tablecloth was worn, but the table seemed untouched. What was weird about the tablecloth, aside from the rips and tears, was that every one of the Disney characters on the cloth had some sort of deformity. Like Mickey had no ears, Goofy didn't have his little black nose, and Donald was missing a leg. Realizing I had the camera, I snapped a picture. That camera flash was creepy in the dark. It really lit up the characters' deformities, which was not good for my stomach. It was weird. I seriously thought I was going to puke right then and there, but I didn't. I thought my mental state was going to deplete faster, but no. My brain seemed to be giving me mixed signals. At one moment, it wanted me to get out as fast as my legs would carry me. Then, it would want me to go further for the sake of my own sick curiosity. This brain of mine is too weird to understand. I guess my brain wanted to get back at me for coming here, because I felt as if something was behind me. I didn't turn around immediately, as I was fearful as what I would see. I thought I was going to die. My heart began to pound. I began to perspire like a flipping waterfall. I slowly turned around, shocked by what my eyes were met with. Nothing. Nothing was behind me except dead air space. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. I threw some light where I was looking, just to make sure that nothing was there. And sure enough, there was nothing. I had to shake my head and stay there for a second before I carried on. I then went back to the living room and took a right. I scanned the hallway, which seemed to be in the worst state. The paint was peeling, the ceiling dripped down at one point, and it seemed like the whole roof would collapse at any second. Then, my eyes seemed to twitch towards something. I saw a bedroom. I shone my flashlight into it, and it seemed untouched. The bed was intact. The walls were still gorgeously painted with a light blue. It looked as if it belonged to a young boy. It was that moment that my brain remembered why we were here. To get the doll. Knowing that my treasure could be in there, I shone my light around. No immediate threats, so I decided to go in. And in there was the one item I wanted. That Pinocchio doll. I quickly walked over to it and put the light on it. The first thing that caught my eye were his eyes. They seemed to be more realistic than more dolls' eyes were. It was odd, for lack of a better word. It had white goop dripping from its nose and eyes, much like the heads I had just seen. My brain then connected something. The man who died and this goop. Were they somehow related? First the man, then the heads, and now this. It wasn't blood, that's for sure. What was this foreign substance? I decided to be stupid though, and put some on my finger. I lifted it to my nose and smelled it. It was awful. My nose wrinkled up and my eyes watered. It smelled like sewage. Why in the world would have gotten into this doll to make it smell like that? I didn't want to be here any longer. I'd had enough of this. I just wanted to get the doll and go home. I decided that I would clean it at home. I gathered it up, put it into the bag. It was a little heavier than I imagined, but nothing I couldn't handle. I had gotten what I came for. The doll. My spirits seemed to lighten a little bit. I walked out of the bedroom. I thought that all this crazy paranoia stuff would stop. Until, that is, I saw one of the heads twitch. Wait, what? That was my first thought. Why was this head twitching? I had to stop and just stare, and the head seemed to be fine with that. It kept on twitching, getting more and more violent. More of that white goop coming out of it. It went all over the room. Some of it hit me in the face and, of course, I repulsed back. What the hell is happening? I'd finally snapped. I couldn't take this anymore. Then, my bag rustled. I turned to be met with a hand popping out of my bag. I tore my bag off and dropped it on the floor. My heart began to pound like a drum. The doll crawled out of the bag and looked at me. Its eyes fixed on my body and the white goop dripping out of its mouth and eyes. "Welcome to the house of Disney," it said in that sweet, innocent Pinocchio voice. I began to walk back. The doll didn't follow. It just stood there and said, "Welcome to the house of Disney." It said it repeatedly. Fear was raising inside me until I had to run. My legs would carry me. The doll muttered one last thing before I turned and ran. "Welcome to the house of hell." I darted out of that place with plans to never return. What had just happened? Is that doll possessed? It didn't take me long until I got back to my home. I ran inside and slammed the door. Then I collapsed on the floor, trying to calm myself. I had to contemplate what the hell had just happened to me. Was this some sick prank? Or was it something more? I realized something. My camera. I still had it. I sat up quickly and looked at it. I went to the album to see the pictures I took. But on there was a picture I hadn't taken. Remember that man I mentioned? There was a picture of that doll strangling him. The white goop was oozing out of the doll's eyes and mouth. It was also seeping out of the doll's hands, and it covered the guy. I stared at the camera for what seemed like forever. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, or what took that picture. I definitely didn't take it. I threw that camera away as hard as I could. It smashed on the wall. I didn't care if I would be called a liar. I didn't want anything to do with that doll. I didn't want anything to do with that house. I got up and sat on my couch. I had to relax my brain. It was thrashing violently. And you know what? I felt something drip on me. I looked at my shoulder to be greeted by white goop. I never did figure out what had caused that goop. But remember how I said I used to live there? Yeah, that's the reason I moved. I was scared. I had to flee, and flee fast. Now that I sit in my home, recording this, I realize now why they might have moved.